Now to KwaZulu-Natal, the army has touched down in Mobeni, southwest of Durban. Earlier, the looting appeared to be out of control, but the army was able to disperse the looters. Senior reporter Dasen Thathiah is on the ground. Dasen, I'm sure you've seen your absolute fill of action in the last couple of days. Give us a sense of whether there is indeed calm on the ground in Mobeni, where you are this evening.
Well, Andy, we are in Phoenix now, and that's where the army has also been deployed. I can tell you that the mood is slightly different. Just take a look behind me. That's the army vehicle that was deployed to the area here. Now, they are also surrounded by Metro Police and SAPS vehicles. We can take you a little closer to where that vehicle is parked and where these members have been deployed. It's interesting to see them being led, or rather this convoy being led by the army vehicle and having these other police vehicles around. And that also speaks to the fact that the SANDF is here in its capacity to support the SAPS's efforts in fighting crime during this time, or this unprecedented time. What was really inspiring, or what brought happiness, I think, to some of the residents was seeing this presence here, and they expressed that through the clapping that we saw earlier as this vehicle drove through with its members. So it's all about visible policing now. That's the good news for this community. The bad news is that we've been told that at least 15 people have been killed here. Those numbers are still to be confirmed by the official police sources, but that's what the community is telling us. At least 15 people have been killed here in vigilante attacks. Now, this stems from, over the past few days, we've been seeing mass looting taking place at various stores. Community members here had then set up these roadblocks, and they had accused some that have been coming through of stealing items. Things had escalated, vehicles were burnt, bodies were lying in the streets of Phoenix. We witnessed that for ourselves over the past few days here. And since then, it's also developed into something of a racial war between the Phoenix community as well as the Zwelisha community, which is nearby. Both communities claim that the other is wrong. We have spoken to both of them. The Zwelisha community tells us that they are being victimized by the Phoenix community just purely on the basis of being black. The Phoenix community says that they are using this area as a way to transport their looted goods, and they won't have that. That's why they've set up these roadblocks. So hopefully now, after things came to a head today and both of those communities clashed earlier on, there was a shootout in the area. Hopefully now, with the visible policing that we are seeing, the deployment of the SANDF with its vehicle here patrolling the streets, as well as the members here, hopefully there will be some peace for residents in both those communities tonight. But that won't be the end of it, Andy. There have to be conversations that need to be had. There has to be leadership that has to be shown here, because even beyond this looting spree and beyond what we are seeing now, these tensions still remain, even though there is now, as I speak to you, more of a sense of calm in this area.
Dasen, the racial tensions between the Indian community, not only in Phoenix, but in the greater KwaZulu-Natal and Zulu community members, has even made it into a speech by the new Zulu king. He urged members of both sides to work together, denied that there was victimization on either part. However, you have also been targeted by members of the Phoenix community on social media, saying there was not enough coverage throughout the day, that there was intensified looting, that there was no support from the SANDF or SAPS. Do you think that all of this attention on this one area is the reason why we can now see additional support, the SANDF vehicle behind you, numerous SAPS vehicles now focusing their attentions on Phoenix, or is that same attention being spread to other areas of KZN as well?
I think the dynamics are different in various areas, Andy. I mean, in this one, the racial tension started very early. In fact, it was one of the first places in which we saw that developing, and that was when the first of these roadblocks, and how we saw how violent that can be and how it can go wrong with vigilantism. It's one of those cases where when you come in and you talk to people and you ask them what happened, how was their body that's now suddenly lying on the roadside, and they'll tell you that they don't know. yet there were many community members that saw what happened. This is certainly what happened there. The social media videos showing cars being stopped, showing people brandishing weapons, all of that has attracted the attention of the SAPS. And as I mentioned, it's good to see this kind of presence here, because you'll remember that over the past few days we've been reporting that there hasn't been as much police presence as communities would have liked to have seen. They were feeling unsafe. They felt that they had been left to their own devices, which was one of the reasons why it ended up with these types of street committees being formed, which is why these roadblocks had been held, which is why even police that were driving past were turning a blind eye to communities stopping and checking where people were going. I mean, that's restricting our freedom of movement, but I imagine that there was no choice. There was, at this point where there was no other way of stopping the looting that was going on, and police knowing that their resources were limited, it was one of those things that they just realized they had to kind of turn a blind eye to. We saw that firsthand. So with that, against that backdrop, it's good now, excuse me, especially after finally seeing leaders come to the streets much later. Finally, after all that, we're noticing now more of a support from the police as well as the SANDF.
Dasen, can you tell us whether there has been any unrest, looting, violence, burning, shootings in the area where you currently are within the last couple of hours, or has that pretty much been quelled by the presence of the SANDF and the SAPS?
Well, we haven't heard reports of looting only, but we have heard reports of shooting. And that was what I described to you earlier between the two communities. And I was talking to Sally earlier, and I was explaining to her how, if you excuse me, these fumes from this truck are getting to me, if you allow me just to take a step away. There was a road that separates these two communities. One was a dirt road, and the other was a tar road. And that's where things came to a head. Police had to intervene, one community accusing the other community. Shots were fired. I was told that at least one man was shot in the leg during that confrontation between those communities. So it's turned to that. It seems to have moved beyond the looting that we saw over the past days, which was what had started this type of vigilantism in the area. So, you know, in having these discussions, Anli, you would have picked up that there are so many different angles to this story beyond just the obvious and beyond what we are taking at face value, and that's the complete lawlessness, the looting, and the violence. There are also these other repercussions, and those will come to the fore once all of the so-called action subsides.
Thank you very much, Senior Reporter Dasen Thathiah in Phoenix for us this evening, moving around, tracking the movements not only of the SAPS and the SANDF deployed in KZN, but also of looter and unrest occurring there.